Hi. We are working today, thanks for joining, on Module 19, Lesson 3, Use ordered pairs to represent problems. So let's get it started here. Whoops. There it is. All right. It looks a little blurry. See if I can fix that. That's a little better. Here we go. We have a graph. What could this graph represent? Take a look at that title and how the axes are labeled. So this graph could represent Tessa's studying how many days and how many hours Tessa studied. So how many days and hours Tessa studied? Let's see how that goes. During which days did Tessa study for exactly 3 hours? So I'm looking at our y-axis. I'm looking for the 3 hours. Which days did she study exactly 3? We have day 5 and day 8. Look over there, day 5 and 8. What are the coordinates for the points that represent the days Tessa studied for exactly 2 hours? So what are the coordinates? We're looking for 2 hours. Here are my hours. Here are 2. What would this coordinate be? This first one would be day 1, 2 hours. We have day 4, 2 hours. And we have day 9, 2 hours. So those would be our coordinates for those points. What do the labels along the x-axis and the y-axis tell you about each coordinate? So if we look at the x-axis, what does this label tell us about that coordinate there? For x, it equals what day she studied. And for the y, tells us how many hours she studied. Good. What does the point 2, 5 represent? Let's look. 2 tells us day 2, and the 5 represents 5 hours. 2 equals day 2. 5 equals 5 hours of study on that day. 3 vertices of a rectangle are 7, 2, 3, 2, 3, 9. What are the coordinates of the 4th vertex? So we did this in class together. We compared. Here we have both of the y-axis with a value of 2 at y. Here we have the x. We have the 3s representing the x. What do we have left for that 4th axis? Fourth vertex. Look at what place those numbers are left at. Those values would be 7, 9. For the perimeter, I have to think 7, 2, 3, 2. So on that x, from 7 to 3 would be 4 places. So for 2 sides of this rectangle, we have 4. For perimeter, we'll do 4 plus 4. For the y, then, we would have 7, 2, and 7, 9, if we were imagining that. So from 2 to 9, we have 7. So for those vertical sides, we would have 7 and 7. So I have 7 plus 7 is 14, plus 4 is 18, plus 4 would be 22 for our perimeter. And we don't have a label, so we'll just call it 22 units for the perimeter. All right. Let's see what kind of test prep we have here. The coordinates for 3 vertices of a rectangle are 0, 4, 8, 4, 8, 1. If we're finding the 4th vertex, let's look again and compare. For the y-axis, I have 2 y values of 4. I have 2 x values of 8. I have left an x value of 0 and a y value of 1. So that's going to give us letter C. If I'm finding the perimeter, I have to think if I have 0, 4, and 8, 4. If I imagine that, I started on my x, I went 0, 4, 8, 4. From 0 to 8 on that x would be how many units? 8. So I have 2 units of 8. If I'm doing perimeter, I have to have the top and the bottom. Then I have, let's see, I have 8, 4, and 8, 1. So I went up 4 and up 1. What is that comparison? What is that difference? It would be 3. So I have 8 plus 8 is 16, plus 3 is 19, plus 3 is 22. 22 units. I believe it's letter D. If we use this graph, Kyle's work schedule, let's look at it for just a moment. If his work schedule tells us which week he's working and how many hours he's working. So we have the week and the hour. How many hours did Kyle work in week 2? Here we go on our x-axis, week 2. I'm looking at hours. He worked 5 hours. Select all the weeks that Kyle worked exactly 8 hours. So weeks is plural. It's going to be more than one. He worked 8 hours. Let's look. Here are 8 hours. I'm going to see week 3. I'm going to mark that. 8 hours. I see week 6 and week 9. Let's double check. Week 1, he worked 6 hours, not 8. And week 8, he worked 10 hours, not 8. Right. That was our lesson for the day for the spiral review. Ralph measures a stone wall to be 4 yards long. He wants to extend the wall another 8 feet. How many feet long will the wall be? So how many feet in a yard? That's a good question. Do you know? I believe, double check me. I believe there are 3 feet in 1 yard. So if I have 4 yards, then I have 12 feet. And he wants to extend it another 8 feet, which would equal how many feet? 20 feet. Okay, somebody check that one. 3 feet in a yard. Check that one for me. Write the decimal in word form. Let's say this. Can you read this one? 36 and 39 thousandths. Let's do short word form. 36 and 39 thousandths. Now, if you wanted to do standard word form, 36 and 39 thousandths. Make sure, notice I have this dash between. When we have double digit numbers like that, 36, 39, we put a dash between. Okay, that's it. That is it for today's lesson. I really appreciate you joining and working along or checking your answers. Fantastic. You rock. And I'll see you next time in class. So long.